But that's different from interpretation. That's different between interpretation and keeping it together.
You are making a general rule of.
No, I'm not making a general rule. I'm being very specific. I'm being very, 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 very specific. I'm talking about interpretation. I'm talking about tafsir. I'm not talking about how the book is preserved. I'm talking specifically about how to interpret the ayahs. This is a very specific thing. Excuse me.
How are you going to understand what Rasulullah himself understand about the Quran?
How do we understand?
How are you going to learn to understand what Rasulullah and the Sahaba understand about the Quran?
Well, first off, obviously we look at for the ulama as well, but we also look at the historical context in which they live, and we try to understand the atmosphere in which they live, the environment in which they live, the culture in which they live. That's why we also study the seerah. Okay, so for instance, when I was mentioning to you regarding the earthquakes, prior to giving you this information, I actually researched whether earthquakes occur within the region. Secondly, I also researched whether there were mountainous regions in the area. Okay, and then third, I came to the conclusion that I did, given the fact that it's very commonsensical, and that it's more simple of the explanations than saying the plate tectonics and everything like this, and it's something that the Arabs would have easily understood. So in a way, I'm implying this concept, I guess you call it Occam's razor. Anybody heard of Occam's razor? It's a scientific principle that you accept the more simple explanation over the more complex one. If the simple explanation fits, then you take it. In regards to the Quran, actually one of the main principles that many have suggested is that prior to looking into the internal meanings, you take the face meaning, the face value meaning first, right? And before you go into what it could mean otherwise. So I know I'm being simplistic. I'm not trying to limit your minds here.
I'll give you one more example.
Okay, go for it.
Iram.
Huh?
The city of Iram.
Okay.
No one knew ever before. Tell me, what does Rasulullah ﷺ understand about city of Iram?
Even Rasulullah.
Even Rasulullah and Sahaba. No one ever knew about city of Iram. The translators were confused that it was a city or probably a man, like how Israel was. You know, Nabi Yaqub alayhi salam was given the title of Israel, which later becomes the country. No one ever knew until they had this excavation in 1956.
In regards to historical events, now we're talking about historical phenomena.
This historical event is also scientific.
Are we talking about, how is it scientific? I'm sorry.
Because it's facts.
Okay.
It's about civilization, it's about lessons,
okay.
And it's a truth that these people exist. Their existence.
Yes.
How is that not scientific?
No, I don't think it's scientific. Archaeology is not, I'm trying to say is that historical events are not scientific. They're never classified as science. When we're talking about, okay, let me make the distinction here. We're talking about history, okay? We mentioned certain cities, certain people. We're still mentioning people and cities. Just something very simple to understand. There are many cities in the Quran that were mentioned, that were destroyed. Okay, the ruins of, we don't know how the people lived there. It only is referenced in the Quran itself. However, it's still understandable. There are also prophecies in the Quran regarding the conquest of where?
So you're talking about cities and civilization which were known. Iram was a lost city.
A lost city.
It was a lost city. No one ever knew about it. And I've read the tafsir. Some ulama were not even sure whether this was a city or probably a person.
Okay.
I thought it must be a city somewhere, city of Iram, this guy was there, so it's mentioned as city of Iram. And eventually the author of Quran beat them all when the city of Iram was found in Muscat, in Oman. And,
well, in this regard, I'm going to take the safe route and say I don't know. Okay? But the reason that I've been objecting regarding the scientific phenomenon is because I honestly don't believe that they would be, and I'm talking not about knowledge as in knowing, but also the lack of understanding would have been there. I don't think they would have understood anything near what we imply regarding these phenomenon anymore. So for instance, plate tectonics, once again, there is no way that they would have possibly understood within that the single ayahs.
Look at embryology.
Yeah.
Everyone understood that from a sperm, it became alaqa, fine, it is totally understood. But today we have more information about that. So what's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with
Like
having more
it was
information.
Middle Age and it.
But I don't think that we should apply that onto the Quranic message, because I don't think it was revealed in that way. I think it was revealed only in a vague fashion for them to understand. So I'm like I said, I'm wary, even though these things are factual, many things are factual from a scientific perspective, I'm still wary, because there are many things that, okay, and I'll give you one example of a scientific phenomenon that occurred in the past century that people had no clue about. Theory of relativity. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody saw it coming at all that time was relative. Nobody had any clue that that was going to happen. And the fact that that was revealed, you know, completely eclipsed everything that we understood about time prior. We thought it was linear for that. Now we know it curves, and it depends on where you are, and and the type of atmosphere you are in the universe, and it can change. And now quantum physics is even suggesting that different dimensions can change the whole content of time, and that time itself might actually be a physical property. I mean, this is, we're getting to a point now where our whole understanding completely changes, and I'm concerned that it will do it again. And I don't want to put that burden onto the revelation when it doesn't need to be there. The Quran never needed it before, and it doesn't need it now. That's what I'm trying to say. The Quran was fine by itself. It was valid by itself. It proved itself without need for science, and it can still do it. And I don't think that we should try to move in that direction.
Play safe.
Yeah, I mean, we're playing it safe because, like I said, I'm trying to have a really balanced position here. I'm trying to say at one point that it's not wrong, but at the same time, I would, you kind of don't put your foot. It's okay to put your feet in the water, but if there's a shark there, there's only a few more times before it bites you. So all I'm trying to say is dangerous. That's it. So I will not object if you wish to continue doing it. However, I would suggest, as a brother, just be extremely careful. Be extremely careful.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Just like you said, we should understand Quran as what Sahabat understand the Quran. What about the ayat Washamsu tajri li mustaqarrin laha? Meaning is, and the sun rise on its fixed course for a term.
Okay.
What do you think the companion understand about this ayat?
As a relative movement. It was understood relatively from the perspective of the individual. So they saw the sun moving. So we also say it today in English. The sun rises and falls. But we don't mean that. We don't mean that it literally goes up and down. We just say it because we can't, do you want to say the sun rises, or do you want to say, hey, the earth is turning on its axis? Here we go. Okay, it's that time now. No, I mean...
Yeah, but the verse says the sun, the moon, and the earth, yasbahun, they're swimming in its orbit.
Yeah.
All three.
Okay.
How does Sahabat understand?
Do you want me to go into this? Okay. All right, the ancient Greeks, okay, and I will also mention why the Arabs probably already knew the earth was round prior. The ancient Greeks already understood the earth to be round, much, much earlier than any other civilization. Plato. Everyone else understood the earth flat concept is actually a myth. Very few civilizations actually believed the earth was flat. Most civilizations believed it was round. And the reason why was from basic observation. And what they would usually do is they would go to a high point, okay, like a mountain, and during the nighttime, if it's clear outside, you can actually see the curvature of the earth. Okay, it's very simple. You can also look up and you see the stars, you see the planets, they also have a shape. So they insisted and implied from that the earth must be likewise round. They also noticed throughout the seasons that the stars changed positions, even though they were standing in the same place. So they assumed from that the earth was also not stationary, or that the planets themselves were moving. Okay, then the eclipses occurred and other such things. So they did have a notion that there was motion occurring within the planetary system, with the planetary objects, the celestial objects as they call them. So this was actually a commonsensical belief. Now, they didn't prove it, of course, until later, until it was actually observed directly or based on the shadow from the